I had just finished my first year at a new job, and I was on a road trip to celebrate. It was late summer, 2017, and I decided to drive cross-country to visit some friends I hadn't seen in a while. The highways were mostly quiet, with long stretches of nothing between small towns, just miles of dark road. The drive had been peaceful, but after about 15 hours behind the wheel, I was starting to feel the fatigue hit hard. My plan was to stop at the next motel, but the GPS said the closest one was still over an hour away. As I cruised along the empty highway, I suddenly felt a sharp jolt. My car lurched, and within moments, the engine cut off entirely. I coasted to a stop on the shoulder, hoping it was something minor. But when I tried restarting the car, there was nothing but a weak sputter. I stepped out and popped the hood, but I wasn't mechanically inclined, so it all just looked like a maze of metal and wires. Frustrated, I pulled out my phone, only to realize I had zero signal. Great, I thought, stranded in the middle of nowhere with no way to call for help. After a few minutes of pacing and cursing under my breath, I accepted that my only option was to wait and hope someone would come by. An hour passed, maybe two. A few cars zipped by, but none of them slowed down when I waved them down. I was beginning to lose hope when I finally saw the headlights of a pickup truck in the distance. I stood up and flagged it down, and to my surprise, it actually pulled over. It was an old beat-up truck with a rusted-out bumper. The driver rolled down the window, revealing a middle-aged man with scruffy facial hair, wearing a stained trucker hat. "Need some help?" he asked, his voice raspy and deep. His smile was wide, too wide for comfort, but I figured I didn't have many options. "Yeah, my car just died," I replied. "Think I could get a lift to the nearest town?" "Sure thing," he said, his eyes glinting under the dashboard lights. "Hop in." Despite a creeping unease in my gut, I climbed into the passenger seat. As we pulled back onto the highway, the man didn't say much. I tried to break the silence with some casual conversation. "Are you from around here?" I asked. "Not really," he replied flatly. "Just passing through. I like driving at night." There was something off about his tone, like he wasn't really interested in talking. I stared out the window, trying to ignore the growing feeling of discomfort. We drove for about 15 minutes, but instead of heading toward any recognizable town or gas station, the man suddenly veered off the highway and onto a dirt road. I immediately sat up straight, my heart starting to race. "Where are we going?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Shortcut," he said with that unsettling grin again. "Trust me." But I didn't trust him. Something about the situation felt all wrong. The road was bumpy, lined with tall trees that seemed to swallow us in darkness. I looked at the man out of the corner of my eye, and that's when I noticed his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white. My instincts were screaming at me to get out, but we were in the middle of nowhere. I was trapped. As the truck bounced along the uneven road, a clearing appeared ahead. A dilapidated cabin sat in the center, its windows boarded up and roof half collapsed. The man slowed down, his grin widening. "Here we are," he said. My heart pounded in my chest. "What is this place?" I demanded, panic rising in my voice. He didn't answer. Instead, he cut the engine and started to reach for something under his seat. Without thinking, I flung open the door and bolted into the trees. I heard him shout behind me, but I didn't look back. I just ran, branches and underbrush tearing at my clothes as I sprinted into the woods. The darkness was overwhelming, but I didn't stop. I could hear him crashing through the woods behind me, calling out in a sing-song voice, "Come on back. I'm not gonna hurt ya. Just want to talk." His voice sent chills down my spine. I zigzagged through the trees, hoping to lose him in the dark. My lungs burned and my legs ached, but I kept going. After what felt like forever, the sound of his footsteps faded. I slowed down, crouching behind a fallen tree to catch my breath. I could still hear him faintly, wandering through the woods, calling out for me. I held my breath, praying he wouldn't find me. Minutes passed, maybe hours, but eventually, the woods grew silent. I didn't dare move until I was certain he was gone. When I finally felt it was safe, I pulled out my phone again, desperate to see if I had signal. To my relief, one tiny bar had appeared. I quickly dialed 911, whispering my location as best as I could to the operator. It felt like an eternity before I saw the flashing lights of a police cruiser on the main road. I stumbled out of the woods, exhausted and shaken. The officers didn't find the man or the truck when they searched the area, and the cabin, just like I feared, was abandoned. I don't know what that man had planned for me, but I'm just thankful I escaped before I could find out.
Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more terrifying horror stories. It was a little after midnight, and I was on my last delivery of the night. I worked for one of those food delivery apps, the kind that lets you track your driver's every move, so I always tried to be quick and efficient. The order came in for a house about 20 minutes outside of town, just far enough to make me think twice about accepting it, but I figured I could handle one more. The address seemed odd, though. As I drove out of the city, the streets grew darker, fewer houses appeared, and soon I found myself on a winding dirt road. My GPS kept recalculating, trying to get me back on track, but it insisted this was the right way. The uneasy feeling in my gut started as a faint whisper, but it quickly grew louder as I realized I hadn't seen another car for miles. I kept checking my mirrors, half expecting to see someone, but the road was eerily empty. I finally pulled up to the house, a single-story, run-down place at the edge of a wooded area. No lights, no signs of life. I thought about texting the customer, but before I could, a notification popped up.
Leave it at the door.
I stepped out of the car, and that's when I noticed it. Complete silence. No wind, no crickets, just the sound of my shoes crunching on the gravel as I walked toward the door. The air felt thick, like it was pressing in on me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I placed the bag on the porch, took a quick photo for proof, and turned to leave, when my phone buzzed. It was a message from the customer.
Wait. Don't leave yet.
I stopped dead in my tracks. There was no reason to wait, the instructions were clear. Just leave the food and go. But the message kept replaying in my head. Against my better judgment, I stood there for a moment, staring at the dark house, wondering if someone was inside watching me. Then, another message.
Can you come around back?
No way. There was no way I was doing that. I quickly walked back to my car, got in, and locked the doors. As I put the key in the ignition, my phone buzzed again.
We can see you.
A chill ran down my spine. I scanned the area, but the porch light didn't come on. The windows were black. How could they see me? My heart pounded in my chest as I threw the car into reverse and sped out of there, gravel spitting under my tires. I didn't look back until I was on the main road, and even then, I half expected to see headlights tailing me. But there was nothing. No cars. No people. Just an empty road leading me back to town. As soon as I got home, I reported the incident to the app. I thought that would be the end of it, just a creepy experience to laugh off later. But the next night, when I checked my phone to start my shift, I saw it, a new delivery request. The address? The same house. The message this time?
Don't run. We'll be waiting.
I've been driving trucks for almost 15 years now, and I've seen my fair share of strange things on the road. But what happened to me about 6 months ago still sends shivers down my spine every time I think about it. I slammed on my brakes, the tires screeching in the dead of night, but when my truck came to a halt, there was no one there. I sat there, my heart pounding in my chest, scanning the area with my headlights. The road was empty. No man. No movement. Just the sound of the wind and my own heavy breathing. I didn't wait to find out what was going on. I pressed the pedal to the floor and didn't stop until I reached the next truck stop, where the lights of civilization could finally pull me out of whatever I'd just experienced. To this day, I still don't know what I saw out there. Some nights, when I'm back on those dark, empty roads, I find myself checking my mirrors a little more than usual. Because somewhere deep down, I know he's still out there, waiting. And one night, he might step out of the shadows again. It was late, around 2 a.m., and I was hauling a load through the back roads of Wyoming. I prefer these routes, they're quieter, with less traffic and better scenery. But that night, the isolation felt different. The night seemed darker, the air heavier, like something was waiting just beyond the reach of my headlights. I was about an hour away from my stop, on a long stretch of road with no towns, no lights, nothing but wilderness for miles. That's when I noticed it. A lone figure, standing by the side of the road. At first, I thought it was a deer or maybe some hitchhiker, but as I got closer, it became clear it was a man. He wasn't moving. Just standing there, staring at my truck as it approached. Something about him gave me the creeps. His clothes looked old, ragged, like he'd been wandering for days. His face was pale, unnaturally pale, and he stood completely still, almost too still, as if he was waiting for something. I don't stop for people, especially not in the middle of nowhere at night, so I kept driving, telling myself it was nothing. But about 20 minutes later, I saw him again. Same spot, same road, same pale face staring me down. My stomach dropped. It wasn't possible. I'd been driving straight the whole time, never turned off, never slowed down. Yet here he was, standing exactly where I had seen him before. I gripped the wheel tighter and kept going, trying to shake off the growing unease gnawing at me. I didn't want to believe it was anything more than a trick of my tired mind. But then, after another 10 miles, I saw him again. This time, he wasn't just standing. He was walking. Slowly, purposefully, right towards the middle of the road. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more terrifying horror stories. It started like any other late-night haul. I had a route running from Oregon down to Nevada, hauling a load of construction materials, driving through long stretches of isolated highways. I'd been a trucker for years, and if there's one thing I know, it's how lonely these roads can get at night. It's just you, the road, and the occasional flicker of headlights from another rig coming the opposite way. This night was colder than usual. I had been on the road for about 8 hours straight, and the caffeine from my last pit stop was wearing off. I could feel my eyes getting heavy, so I decided to pull over at the next stop for a quick bite and some coffee. That's when I saw the sign, Miller's Diner, 24 hours, truckers welcome. I'd never heard of Miller's Diner before, and I'd run this route plenty of times. But in this line of work, places like that pop up and disappear all the time. A warm meal sounded good, so I followed the exit sign and rolled into the parking lot. There were only a couple of other trucks parked out front, and the place had an old-school neon sign that buzzed and flickered in the dark. It seemed quiet, almost too quiet. I stepped inside, and the first thing that hit me was the smell, greasy food mixed with the scent of stale cigarettes. The place was practically empty except for a lone waitress behind the counter. She had that look, tired, worn down by life, barely acknowledging my presence. There was a guy sitting in one of the back booths, hunched over his coffee, staring down at the table like it held the answers to the universe. I took a seat near the front window, just wanting to keep to myself. The waitress shuffled over, no smile, no how's it going, just a blank stare. I ordered a coffee and a burger, trying not to make small talk, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She walked back to the kitchen, and I noticed something strange. The guy in the back hadn't moved at all since I came in. Not a sip of his coffee, not even a twitch. The place felt stuck, like time was barely moving. The hum of the lights overhead droned on, and I began to feel an odd sense of unease. When the waitress came back with my coffee, I asked her if she got many truckers through here. She just shrugged, barely meeting my eyes, and said, "Not many." I took a sip of the coffee. It was cold. I glanced toward the guy in the booth, and this time, I noticed something else. His hands were dirty, almost black, like he'd been digging through the earth. And then, I realized, his coffee hadn't cooled down like mine. It was completely untouched, the steam still rising from the cup. I told myself I was just tired, but the longer I sat there, the heavier the air felt, like the diner was pressing down on me. I couldn't take it anymore. I flagged the waitress down and asked for the check, but she ignored me. She just stared blankly past me, her eyes glazed over like she wasn't even there anymore. That's when the door creaked open. Another trucker walked in. He was tall, gaunt, wearing a heavy jacket with patches from different states. He glanced around, and when his eyes met mine, I saw a flicker of something, recognition, maybe fear. Without a word, he turned on his heel and left, just as quickly as he came in. I had this instinct to follow him. Something told me I needed to get out of there, and fast. So, I left some money on the table and headed out. As I walked to my rig, the cold air hit me like a wall. I climbed into the cab and fired up the engine, ready to leave that place behind. As I pulled out onto the highway, I glanced in my rearview mirror. The diner was gone. No lights, no sign, nothing. Just darkness where it had been. My heart started racing, and I floored it, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I didn't stop driving until the sun came up. I've been on that route dozens of times since, and I've never seen Miller's Diner again. Asked around, 2 other truckers, locals, anyone who might have known about it. No one's ever heard of it. But I'll never forget the way that coffee shop felt, the stillness, the cold. Sometimes, when I'm out on those long stretches of road late at night, I think about that place and wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed longer, if I hadn't left when I did. Some roads take you where you need to go. Others take you places you were never meant to find.